Lola grew up being told by people around her at about 10 years of age that her mum's death was actually her fault through witchcraft. Lola learned that her future belonged outside of her father's family, and so when she started further education at university and moved into a family friend's house full of love and no judgment, she discovered how different life could be. This experience of learning meant for her that it was possible to live a beautiful life, feel loved, and allow her to be the best version of herself, leaving the bitterness of her earlier years behind her. Through discovering who she wanted to be and embracing the challenge to thrive, she discusses how she became the youngest person ever to work in the local radio station and how much of her life has influenced her current mission to provide 100 lower class women in Africa the opportunity to experience a broader perspective of education and life through attending university, and the far-reaching impact this can have on their whole family. Lola will share with us briefly a little about her magnetic messaging and how she's helping other entrepreneurs in their businesses. I know you're going to love this episode. Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments when life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. Today's guest is Lola, founder of Lola WhyMe Consulting in West Africa and a mother of an 8-month-old son. Lola is with me today to share her story of overcoming bitterness and instead embracing forgiveness. And I know I'm looking forward to hearing how this has allowed her to live a more fulfilling life and move into the entrepreneurial space by helping other women to grow profitable empires of their own. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Lola.
Thank you so much, Vera. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about your story and what led you to that really impactful, defining moment in your life where something had to change.
So my mom passed when I was 10, and for the next 10 years, practically the next 10 years, I was really bitter. And I was bitter about a lot of things. As a 10-year-old, me and my mom were quite close, and she was always telling me she was proud of me, stuff like that. And before I met my husband, my mom was the only person I knew was proud of me. Now, I love my father. My father is one of these people who criticize you, even though in their mind they want to praise, but they believe that if they praise you, you get heady or whatever. So my dad hardly ever gave compliments. And so all through that time, I was bitter. I was always asking God, why? Why should my mom die? Why should she be the one, not anyone else? Like, she was practically an amazing person. Like, so many people loved her. Even during my wedding, I got gifts of up to 5,000 USD because of my mom. Like, it was my mom's friends, my late mom's friends. So it was really, for me, that was the center of it. And as I continued growing up, I had a stepmom, and me and my stepmom were never on the same page. So the bitterness kept growing and growing until I was about 16 thereabout. And then I met someone. And unknown to me, because when you're 16, sometimes you don't really know how this relationship things work.
Right.
But unknown to me, he was like taking advantage of me. Was literally taking advantage of me, And then I entered a technical school before I went to university. And my dad was giving me a lot of money. And most of the money, he was taking it. And I felt that, because, he loved me, in quotes, that I was finally going to be happy. So eventually that snowballed. My parents found out. And here in Africa, especially where I'm from, you can actually beat up your kids. Like you can literally take a belt and beat up your kids and no one bats an eyelid. So my dad found out I was 16. This guy was about 21. My dad beat the hell out of me. Horrible. And so I was like I was grounded, no phones, no TV, nothing. And it was just horrible. So I think that was like my lowest moment because every single time I was thinking, why didn't I die instead of my mom? Like if I had just died, maybe everyone else would be happy. And I had a lot of guilt because so many people had told me over the years that my mom's death was kind of like my fault. And it wasn't. I was not even there when it happened. But because of all this, guilt tripping, I had become a child who wasn't sure of what she wanted anymore. I had stopped dreaming. I had stopped planning. I just wanted to get out of the house. Like that was like my biggest dream. I just wanted to leave.
Right. Can I ask you a question?
Definitely.
When people were trying to make you believe that your mum's passing was your fault, as a young, influential woman, how much of that did you actually take on board yourself? How much of that did you believe?
Well, to be honest, I did believe a lot of it. I started thinking like, if only I was a better child, and if only I was more obedient, and because I was a handful. So I was just thinking, if only I like had more time with her, I was more careful, I wasn't so careless, maybe she wouldn't have passed. So, and that affected everything because when she passed and all that started, my grades dropped. I was no longer happy. And my sister and I, 'cause my mom, I have a younger sister from my mom, and my sister and I had like the most awful relationship because she too was made to believe that in a way it was my fault.
Wow, that must have been very difficult. I can only imagine how hard that would be to be carrying that burden at that age, that the people around you that are the people looking after you and loving you are trying to put this on you. So, wow, please continue.
It was. And where it all stemmed from was I used to want to be a doctor. Can you imagine? So I had this big book. It's called Where There Is No Doctor. And when my mom fell ill, I had seen the illness before in the book. So I brought out the book and I said, Mommy, this is what is going on. This is what's wrong. And I remember she said, no, and that's not what's wrong. That I was just a small girl. I wasn't a doctor, blah, blah, blah. So eventually, after 2 years of misdiagnosis, it still fell back to what they said was wrong. And I had like a series of dreams of my mom passing, and I mentioned it, which now in hindsight, I think I shouldn't, but I was just 10. So all those things make people feel like I was in a spiritual group or blah, blah, blah. Here, people are really crazy about witchcraft and stuff like that. So I think everyone felt like I was the witch who killed my mom, kind of thing.
Oh, okay. I see. Very, very difficult, and I can understand why you would have held so much bitterness for so long after that too. So tell me, where did you go on from there? So you said that you wanted to get out of there, out of that home environment. How and where did you do that?
Okay, so what happened was I left at 17. I got admitted into university. So when I went to university, my dad and my stepmom believed that because of what happened with the guy who took advantage of me, that I was too young to stay alone in a hostel. That's a hostel like a dormitory. So they said I was too young to stay alone in the hostel. So they put me up with a family friend. And the family friend was a woman who was close to my late mom. So staying there till now has been the was my biggest blessing because that was the first time I really saw how a family should be.
Right.
There was no judging. There was no, there was plenty drama, but there was no judging. There was no judging. There was no talking down on me. And it was a Christian family, and that's why I really met God. My parents are Christians, and I grew up in that environment. But that was why I really made the decision to live like a Christian, because I had never really seen such great examples. And now, not to throw like shade at my father or something, my father's an amazing man. But at that point in my life, I think I needed to see someone live a beautiful life, be happy, trust in God, and no judgment. And moving there, that was what they gave me. They gave me a family life where I felt like I was finally here. No one was judging me for anything. No one was bringing up my mom. No one was saying, oh, you're a horrible child, you're stubborn, you're this. Nothing. It was like they expected the best of me. And because of that, I was forced to always try to be the best version of myself.
Oh, that's a beautiful story so far. And I'd love to know how being in that environment and having that judgment go away, essentially, to understand that you can be completely who you are and not be judged any which way except to lift you up. What did that do for not only the trust you had in others, but the trust that you had in yourself?
Well, what it did for me was it allowed me to finally be free. So I no longer had to question the kind of person I was. Like, I love talking. I do live videos all the time. So at home, it was always like, you talk too much. You're always talking. You could talk someone to death. But there, what my uncle, I call him my uncle now, but what my uncle there did was they started deliberately pushing me into places in church where I could talk, like, go join the drama team, go do this. So eventually, I was starting to like bloom and show the kind of person I am. And there was no judgment. And because of that, I started trusting myself more.
I love that. I really love that journey. And so, how old were you, do you believe, when you got to that point where you stopped second guessing who you were and what you wanted to do?
So it was really when I was 18, because I went there December and I was 17 at that time. But I stayed there for 4 years, all through my university, I was there. But by the time I was 18, I had already started having the confidence to be who I was. And then what helped me was one day, now this is a funny story. I was laying in bed in my uncle's house and I had like a voice tell me, literally tell me, and I feel it was God, to go to the radio station. It was a new radio station, not too far from the house, not too far from the university, and just asked them if I could work there. So I got up. I don't know if I had that much faith now, but I did have a lot of faith when I was 18. So I got up, dressed up, went to the radio station, said I was looking for the boss. And for radio stations here, it's mostly general managers. So I said I was looking for general manager. And they said, okay, which is weird because normally no one gives you the general manager immediately.
Right.
But so I went there and I had a conversation with the general manager and it was like, awesome, you could start on Friday.
Fantastic.
And that was my first job. And that job led to other jobs. And that was where I really got my voice because I was on air every Saturday. I was having like an audience. I was having people around me. I met the most amazing people. So I was 18 and I was the youngest person in the radio station. And everyone wanted to teach me. Everyone wanted to help me. That family was just beautiful. And with the family at home and this family here, it was just great. I was hardly ever going home for holidays. So it's positive environments at home, at work, in school. I met my husband in school. We were classmates. So it was just amazing. I had an amazing experience in university.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And I'd love to know, in the community that you've grown up in and that you're living in, do many people get the opportunity to go to university like you did and is walking into that job at the radio station, is that something that normally happens, or, is that just one of those things, opportunities that you seized and fell into place?
Okay, like the going to radio, that's a one-off opportunity. I worked in radio after that for 4 years, and I tell you that most people who go in like that don't get paid, or don't or do like get, oh, come and do it for free, stuff like that.
Right.
But for university, the opportunity to go to university is here. But the only problem is it's easier for people who are middle class and who are rich.
Mm-hmm.
For people who are poor and in extreme poverty, there are a lot of factors that make it hard for them to go to university. The first thing is the admission process in the first place. So you're coming from a school which is not so good. You have to write, the WhyMe exam with all the people all over West Africa. You have to compete to enter into this school with people into university, with people who have gone to better schools, who have like more access. And when you get to university, if you don't have like merits, like if you don't have a really good grade, you're not going to get in. The only people who get in without good grades are people who have money to lobby, who like they know someone who knows someone who knows someone. And all those things, because of that, there's a big inequality. Middle class people, my parents are middle class, super easy for them. I never struggled to go to school. So my parents are middle class, my husband's parents middle class, same thing with them. But as I've grown older, which is why my mission actually is to help 100 African women go to school. As I go to university, not just school. As I've grown older, I've realized that for many people, especially people who are coming from poor homes, going to university can be the deal breaker.
Yeah.
Just one person going to university can change the whole family. And I'll use my own family as an example. Like my entire family, my grandfather was the first person to go to university. Because he went to university, all his kids are upper middle class. And he had 6. Because all of them went to university.
Right.
So all of us are going to university because my grandfather took that step. But my second cousins, like my dad's cousins from my grandfather's brothers, none of them is doing really well because their own parents didn't break that cycle. That cycle is it's just so much there. If there's no break, it just keeps on going.
Yeah, very much so. I know that here in Australia, in terms of access to universities, we do have entry requirements, but we have a system where the financial side of it can actually be deferred. So you go on a system which is called HEX. The government pays your fees to go to university, and then as you earn money, they take that out of your wage. So it's quite a good system here to allow more people to go through university. And certainly having gone through university myself, I was the first person in my family to go through university. And I certainly feel like it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So once somebody in your family's gone, they understand the value of that extra education. There is so much that can be gained from being in that environment around people with similar goals and with that academic application really to life. And sometimes it can give you that different perspective. Yeah.
That's amazing, Vera. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in finding out your view. It's Vera-Lee from Australia, the founder of the WhyMe Movement and podcast. Well, one idea, one vision, one person. This self-funded podcast and movement has started to take a life of its own, which is exactly where I had planned it would be. To hear the stories of the far-reaching impact across many countries in this world, it humbles me to know that my vision is shared, understood, and positively influencing people to look at the changes they can make for their own adversity and how they can find the strength, the courage to be inspired and feel connected and empowered to use their adversity to their advantage, One of the best ways that you can help support the WhyMe Movement and podcast is to subscribe to the various channels, such as the podcast platform you are listening to this on now and the YouTube channel, which has much bonus content released. By subscribing, you will make sure that you are one of the first to find out who is coming up next, more about our guests, and the interesting questions that I ask them, which do not get released on the podcast platforms, and lots of other good bonus content. I always love reading your comments, and so please feel free to leave them on each of the platforms. The beauty of social media is that you can easily share single episodes or any of that bonus content from YouTube onto your own social media platform with your friends, which helps to bring this positive, inspiring message to far more people, allowing you to be an active participant in the WhyMe movement and vision. On Apple Podcasts, it always makes a big difference if you can leave a rating, review, and subscribe to the show. Let's get back to today's story. If you're wanting to give that opportunity to 100 women, the sort of people that you're looking to influence to allow that process to occur, how do you go about that process?
So and I did a piece a few weeks ago about, people donating to Africa. So because I'm here, I live in Africa, I do know people who need the money. And I'll tell you like how I know. I had a housekeeper from January till March. Her daughter is 23. She has struggled to enter university for the last 5 years. She's always trying, and sometimes she gets it, but they don't have the money to offset payments because she has to work. So because of that, she's like my number one person. I know I'm going to do that, and I've told her already. So she's the number one person. The number two person is a cousin of mine who coincidentally is an orphan. So her parents died in 2015. She's going to have to enter university next year. And I know there's no one to sponsor that. She may, if she doesn't enter on a scholarship or something, she may not go. And her late mom was my late mom's sister. And I know her mom would have died instead of not allowing her kids to go to university. So she's like my second person. And the thing about all this is people know people who need this. So I've decided not to go the whole non-profit route where most of the money, and that's my own personal thoughts, that most of the money goes into admin costs and stuff like that and doesn't really go to the actual people. So I know these people, and I'm going to give them the money directly to make the payments. Now I told them already, I can't afford to do allowances. I can't afford to do books and everything, but the main school fees is going to be sorted out.
Well, that's a huge help and an incentive, absolutely, to be helping these women. And I'm also wondering, just listening to your story and how your vision has come about, I'm wondering if you believe this would have happened, this path that you're on, if you hadn't dealt with that bitterness.
No, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have, because the thing about being bitter is nothing fascinates you. You just feel like everything is going to end up badly. So because of that, you don't try. And I think that's the main thing. Because I was scared, it's not going to work out. This is going to be. I wasn't trying, and I was always being needy. I was always needing someone else to validate me, someone else to love me, someone else to show up for me. But now I don't think that way. Even though, yes, I'm married, even though I have a child, I don't think that way anymore. I don't need anyone to tell me, you're good enough. I know I'm good enough. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I agree. And working with my clients, there's a lot of people I work with that are holding on to that bitterness. And you're right, it's like a poison, and it just infuses into so many of those thoughts that are going through their consciousness. And it's like it can transform a situation to be always looking for that negative, always looking for the dark, always looking for the failure. And we are wired to be more sensitive to the negative than we are to the positive. So would you agree that it does take effort when you're in that space, and it takes reaching out and having somebody to help you? I mean, that the family that you're with, just naturally being in that environment, obviously helped you so much with that inner work.
It's so important to have help because you can't see it. Most times when you're bitter, you don't know you're bitter. It's other people that say, "Why are you so bitter?"
Yes.
Because you see something, you're always seeing the dark side. And even till now, to a large extent, I think that affects the way I see stuff. Like if you bring me a pattern or something, the first thing I see is the mistake. But there was a time I used to see the mistake in everything.
Yes.
Like everything. And because that is so poisonous and because that's so dark, you actually do need help. And for me, that help was God and the family I was in. And it was just so different. And it wasn't instant. Like people feel like, if I just talk to a coach, if I just talk to someone, I should feel better instantly. It wasn't instant. It took me almost a year. But once you go through that process, it just gets better from there because other things can come up. Other things have come up. Like that's like not the last adversity I've had in my life, but other things have come up. But because of this new outlook, this new perspective, this new spiritual groundness that I have with God, it's easier for me to like step up and overcome those new things. But you have to beat the bitterness first.
Yeah, you so do. And I love the fact that you use the word perspective there. That's something else that I'm always working with people on, is taking that different perspective. And for me, it's the creative perspective. And when I wasn't able to communicate verbally for a 2-year period, my artwork was how I communicated. And being able to take that perspective of, let's just go outside of myself for a moment and look in and see what's really going on. Because as you said, when you're in that bitterness, it can be so hard to actually recognize it and to be aware of what's going on. And it does take those influential people around us and having one or two people that we can trust to help guide us through that process. And yeah, I just love the way that you've used all the different elements in your environment to receive that information from different perspectives and then work out how to integrate that into who you are. It's a wonderful story.
Thank you, Vera.
Thank you so much. The last thing I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can get in contact with you and what you can offer.
Okay, awesome. So you could check out my website, lolaoyafemi.com. I have a Facebook group where I go live every single day and I'm always teaching and doing trainings and stuff. And that's just amazing because some of the things I teach, you could just take them and use them immediately in your business and they get better. But what I really offer to my people, and I call all my people, like anyone who's listening to me, you're my people.
Yes.
So what I offer to my people is mostly launch support. So if you're planning a launch and you want to make it a 20K or 30K launch, let's talk. We're going to support you all through the launch. It's not just coaching, it's a done with you service in the sense that we do some of the work, you do some of the work, and we have a 20K launch and you have support all through. And the second thing I help people with is with messaging. So I teach a magnetic messaging framework, a kind of framework that you're applying to your business and you have people reach out to work with you instead of you having to chase people and, sit down on the phone all day trying to convince them to buy your thing.
Thank you so much. And I love that. And even just listening to what you just said then, I've just had this moment of, we've got your story, we've got all of that bitterness, all of that communication, internal communication, the external communication that was essentially making you believe that you had something to do with your mother's passing. The environment that you were then in that changed, helped to change that and give you that different perspective. And the fact that your inner communication is now so far different to where it was at that point, that you're embracing gratitude, you're embracing learning, you're embracing that wonderful new perspective of hope. And here you are You use the words collaborative process. So you're including your community with you on this journey, just as you were included on that journey of discovery yourself. And communication. That's such a full circle moment. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Vera. I just love the way you said it. Thank you so much.
Well, another story, more WhyMe moments, and more reasons to feel inspired to change your adversity into your advantage. An integral part of the vision of the WhyMe movement is the ICE acronym, I's for Inspire. When you feel inspired, you are more likely to take action. C is for two things, actually. Connection. You are not alone in this world. There are always people here who want to help you get through your adversity and feel positive about your life and your purpose. It is also for courage. Courage, in my opinion, is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And there lies the importance of connection. For sometimes we don't feel we have the courage to do things on our own. And yet once we have the emotional support of those people who we trust, it can help us to feel that fear and do it anyway. And lastly, the E is for empower. When we have that connection and the courage and the inspiration to know, get our clarity of purpose, well, that is when we feel empowered to take the action that we want to do to change some aspect of our lives for the better. If you would like my personal support in this area to help you get through adversity in your life, you can contact me at Vera-Lee Original on social media.